why did you write The Shack?
I wrote it on the encouragement of my wife, Kim. I've always been a writer and written as gifts. I've never tried to publish anything or thought about publishing anything. Kim had been asking me for a couple of years to do something a little more, a little different. As she put it, you think sort of outside the box. What I'd really like is for you to put how you think in one place as a gift for the kids. So in 2005, my whole goal was to get this story written for my children, and they range from age 15 to 28, 6 children, and trying to get it done by Christmas. I actually did get the book, first manuscript written by Christmas, but we didn't have the money to print it. But after Christmas we did, and so the first and only intended run of The Shack was 15 copies at Office Depot in Gresham, Oregon, and it did everything that I wanted it to do. Again, I wasn't thinking of publishing. I wasn't even on the radar. That had never been something I had entertained.
So you've always written creatively?
Correct. Poetry, songs, short stories, and newsletters, and cards, whatever. And I'd always been comfortable communicating through writing, but with no intention to do anything professional with it.
When you sat down to start penning The Shack, did you think that it was going to become a novel? Is this the longest thing that you've written?
It is the longest. When I started working on it, I knew that it was going to be a novel, and I was just hoping that it was something that wouldn't bore my children. One of the reasons I love story is that story has a way of inviting you to bring your world into it, and so I love fiction. It's something.
That's just a little bit of the author of The Shack, William Young, and this is the book that we're reading for the book club this time. William Young writes this book for his children, which is interesting, and I'll explore more of this interview later with Fiona Julian, but it does sound like he sets, and I haven't read the whole book yet. I'm on page about 40, and the book begins with a tragedy of his youngest daughter, who is a questioning, intelligent daughter. Actually comes with some questions that shock him with his religious rigidness. This young girl asks questions that open it right up to the ultimate questions, and she questions this myth of this princess that has to sacrifice herself for the entire village, and she says, why did God make her die? And so William Young puts the central question right away to us, and what happens later is that Missy is abducted at a campsite, and I assume the rest of the novel will be trying to explain in a Christian way why God planned for her to be killed. And still, it's somewhat disturbing, and I guess, where I'm at right now with it is that if God is all-knowing and God is all-caring and God has a plan for our lives, then why was this girl brutally murdered? Why did that happen? So I think in some senses this might open us up to the religious rigidness of thought, to open it up to question as to what are the best, whether scientific thought is better for us in the long run, or whether imaginary stories are better. And so far it's just making my mind in the opposite direction, that imaginary stories are not good for us in the long run, even though in the short term it almost may be better to tell kids we don't know. But what a wonderful life this is. William Young is he's an interesting guy. He was born a Canadian, along with 3 younger siblings, was raised among a Stone Age tribe by his missionary parents in the highlands of what was New Guinea. The family returned to Canada, where his father pastored a number of churches for various denominations, so he's always been inundated with the religious background. While in Oregon, Paul Young attended seminary, met and married his wife. Together they celebrate what he calls the wastefulness of grace, which is interesting. Maybe that's the theme that comes up later in the book. So he and Paul Young writes, oh, excuse me, William, I called him Paul Young. I think Paul Young is a bassist for Styx, isn't he? William P. Young. I guess it is Paul. He calls himself Paul. In the website biography, Paul writes, "These are some of the facts of my life, but they don't begin to tell the real story. The journey has both been incredible and unbearable, a desperate grasping after grace and wholeness. Facts cannot tell you about the pain of trying to adjust to different cultures of life, losses that are almost too staggering to bear, of walking down railroad tracks at night in the middle of water, screaming into the windstorm." My friend from Milwaukee talks about a crisis point in his life where he found God, and he was driving in the rain and screaming at God, and could barely see through the windshield. And then that's when he reached his lowest point, and that's when he found God. And you've got to wonder if there is this invisible hand helping us sometimes. And but why would, the central question is, why would God have all these terrible things happen, cancer, earthquakes? And my wife's answer is that just God cannot control certain things. But if God is all-knowing, then He has a plan for everybody. You hear religious people say He has a plan for your life, His plan for my life. Well, what was the plan for this little girl's life? To be a sacrifice. And this whole conception of sacrifice, perhaps, and I'm just speculating here, but perhaps this whole concept of sacrifice is gone way too far. Why should we have to sacrifice a little girl for the rest of us? And then I guess a religious person would say only God knows. So anyway, I'm on page 42 and of the Shack, and I'll have another YouTube on after when I finish the book, a more complete YouTube. But right now, for my book club, my central point right off the bat will be, why do we have to kill Missy off at the beginning of the book? Why? And I'm sure we'll learn more mysterious things in the Shack about love and forgiveness, and the arduous road of reconciliation, the surprises of grace and community. So for now, and I would check this interview is kind of interesting with Fiona Julian. If you have a chance, I won't play any more today, but if you have a chance, the author gives some interesting insights into his own life and how it connects with how he had to write something like this, maybe even for his own therapy. So over and out, and we'll read the Shack together. If anybody wants to, any of my followers on YouTube want to read the Shack and follow in and comment, that would be most welcome. The Shack is what we're reading for book club in my community, and we'll be discussing it in mid-May, so still have a few more days to read it. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.